at that time, and multitudes who survive the war will be contaminated and burned by radiation. Chemical warfare will cause horrifying and atrocious skin diseases, and biological warfare will produce festering sores and many other ills, not to mention vicious human freaks, etc. Prior to these events unfolding, however, always with the assumption that the prophecy fulfills itself through man's own fault, scientists will discover the manipulated gene from ancient times in the DNA chain responsible for the rapid aging in human beings. These events may yet unfold this year, for preparations in this area began already in 1994. Whether scientists make their discovery public and utilize their findings to their fullest merit is questionable, however. From the way things look now, public disclosures regarding these discoveries will not be made until a much later date and probably will still remain this way for a very long time before the public will be fully informed about the discovery. Therefore, a long period will pass before the genetic manipulations are reversed by retro-manipulation of the pertinent gene. For the time being, scientists will be unaware that the gene they have stumbled upon is the key factor, and that it is this particular gene which was previously manipulated once before, many millions of years ago. Should the prophecy of another world war fulfill itself, and should terrestrial humankind not immediately begin rethinking and redirecting its entire effort into beneficial routes, the consequences of this World War III will be cataclysmic. Likewise, this holds true for an enormous revenge campaign directed against the war precipitators, which will be initiated and directed by a bloodthirsty man, who is, how could it be otherwise? Another representative of God, a pope. Once again, these events are based on the condition that the prophecy fulfills itself through the fault of Earth's human beings. With the melting of the polar caps there also looms for Earth in the not-too-distant future another severe economic crisis that will spread throughout the globe. And another global war, World War IV, will once again threaten this planet and its entire terrestrial population because of their own unreason. However, several reasonable individuals are able to neutralize the threat, which is again abetted by the invention of new weapons with great striking power that will be the materialization of those weapons existing now only in science fiction novels. They are death ray throwers, ray cannons, ray rifles and ray guns, among others. In the midst of these developments, 3 scientists will generate an incredibly inexpensive energy source, although this will not be the only new form of energy, for another will be found as well, that is based on sound vibrations. And again, new and deadly weapons will be developed from this. Scientists tend to utilize everything they can get their hands on, and for this reason it is inevitable that man will stop the greenhouse effect and utilize its effects in reverse, thereby preventing a further melting of the polar caps. These actions, in turn, will lower the highly elevated water levels of all oceans. During this period, terrestrial man will increasingly dedicate himself to space travel, which he had neglected for many years. Venus will be particularly interesting for terrestrial human beings during this period, and for this reason man will contemplate sending a manned space capsule to the volcanic planet. Simultaneously, man will avail himself of a new energy source by exploiting the Earth's interior energies. He will develop 2 new, dangerous weapons. The first weapon's high-pitched, humanly inaudible sounds will be able to destroy any material and will have the capability of absolutely destroying all life forms, an ultrasound weapon in other words. The second weapon will have as its basis high-frequency energies which, too, will be capable of destroying and killing everything. Discoveries and inventions in the field of gene technology or genetic manipulation, respectively, will continue, for events must unfold, contrary to the desires of the foes of genetic manipulation who even now persist in ranting and raving against it. The time is no longer that remote when, through genetic manipulations, plants and animals will be successfully crossbred, and totally new life forms created. Hence, the stupid, antagonistic gripers will scream in vain. They should be grateful instead that science has advanced to a point where genetic manipulations become feasible. for only through genetic manipulations will future rectification of the terrestrials' genetically manipulated degeneration be guaranteed, so that they may be able to again fit into the normal progression of negative and positive. Creational secrets will, of course, not unravel through this process and will remain a mystery to man for the time being, even though he will actively search for them while on space stations beyond Earth. This does not signify, however, that science will be inactive. On the contrary, scientists will unveil the secret of gravitation. In doing so, they will begin mastering certain facets of space and mass. But just before this transpires, terrestrials will develop the capability of allowing human organs to regrow for organ transplants. These organs will always be adapted to the particular body in need of the organ. As a result, the danger of organ rejection is eliminated. During this period, renewed advances into outer space will occur, whereby a large space project, critical to mankind, will take shape, and Albert Einstein's theory on relativity will undergo several additional modifications. One religion will initiate large-scale war activities at that time, which results in the development and utilization of another new, dangerous weapon that will be capable of changing the climate, a so-called climate weapon. However, as bad as they may seem, these periods are not as unstable as that of 1995, a year when new discoveries on Mars are possible, and a year when the seeds of a new ideology are sown that sets it apart from traditional religions. 1995 will also be a year when an unknown, powerful male individual begins to come into prominence who spellbinds the world and gathers followers around him in much the same rat-catching manner as the Pied Piper of Himalayan. For this reason, in one prophecy, he is called the rat-catcher. These events coincide with many innovations and discoveries in technology and science, for 1995 and the ensuing years bring incredible breakthroughs that will change civilization. One contributing factor to these breakthroughs in the near future will be, finally, the exposure and rectification of an error in the pi number calculation. Precipitated by the previously mentioned climate weapon, the entire Earth will be subjected to very problematic climatic changes when overall temperatures fall, that is, they drop dramatically. The result will be that land masses and oceans will freeze because of man's insanity. Consequently, a new invention will be developed that, powered by the most economical of energies, artificially heats the Earth's atmosphere. This is the moment when Japan and China will discover that the prevailing physics is not the last word in knowledge, but that there exists yet a higher level of physics which extends into fine matter spheres. Upon this realization, science will be discredited for some time. Nonetheless, space exploration will continue and a new world discovered in this process, a new Earth that will be suitable for maintaining human terrestrials. The actual period when space travel and with its many related discoveries commence will begin already in the very near future. However, overall, expeditions into space will be successful. For example, comet terrestrials will discover, or rather locate, ancient human traces and effects left behind on Mars. This will present sufficient reason for terrestrials to build, furbish and fly new spaceships with even greater ranges into the vastness of space, to make ever greater, more interesting and, especially, more significant discoveries. Initially, these spaceships will travel over relatively long periods of time until propulsion systems are developed that make superspeed space travel without time shifts feasible. Spaceships reaching velocities above the speed of light, indeed, speeds several million times the speed of light, will one day become the rule. But until this occurs, several hundreds of years, even millennia, will pass. Still, these aforementioned predictions shall occur in the near and somewhat more distant future, and mankind will not be kept waiting too much longer. Even elderly people alive today will experience the commencement of these predictions. The discovery, refurbishing and renewed operation of ancient extraterrestrial artifacts and stations on Mars in the not-too-distant future, and much later in other places as well, will be accomplished by our more distant descendants. These events are also associated with grave danger. However, for dangerous diseases and epidemics will be brought back to Earth by way of space travel, along with the exceedingly vicious wolf, as one prediction calls this horror, which could be a horrifying animal or a deadly epidemic. The definition of the wolf is not clear yet, and its explanation is still pending. According to the prediction, this deadly factor will be introduced or carried to Earth either by ordinary space travelers or law-breaking space travelers. Additionally, in the distant days ahead, the discovery of a new and very significant substance is foretold, one that will benefit man greatly, as long as he is able to utilize it to his own benefit. This entire scenario transpires at a time when a new order exists on Earth that satisfies, in an inexpensive manner, all needs of man. New, overall-like suits for humans will be invented and produced that will enable man to fly through the air freely without aid from any other devices. Barely 3 decades prior to this event, however, a third DNA information code will be discovered in the human body, and the first concrete steps will be undertaken to eliminate diseases in the elderly, heart diseases, and attrition. After approximately 25 years, these efforts will prove successful. Simultaneously, once the appropriate steps are taken, the feasibility of a classless society, as well as technologically biological prerequisites, will emerge that deal with the worldwide cleanup of the polluted rivers, lakes and oceans. This praiseworthy progress will be negated, however, by an extremely negative invention in form of a biological weapon. It will wreak tremendous havoc and induce instant aging in humans and animals in seconds. Shortly thereafter, the period of nocturnal dawning comes into existence, as stated in another prediction. This nocturnal dawning will be a new technological achievement whereby the dark side of planet Earth is illuminated by an artificial sun affixed to a space station. This device will not create full daylight, but a bright, dawn-like condition. The artificial sun in the sky will virtually ring in a new age, the age of space conquest on a grand scale. From here on, space travel definitively will become commercial and turn into a significant, powerful institution by which man, through science, will pursue the enigma of creation and with it the origin of life and all existence. Of course, these events will make science very respectable again, especially as they relate to the institution of space travel, which will control the scientists. Ultimately, this will not turn out well and will transpire as it must. This space travel institution will increasingly ignore the terrestrial governments and science, deal with them unfairly, and will generate conflicts again that provide the most auspicious base for a new war. All of this will come into play barely 15 years after the aging gene is isolated and neutralized, when the human biologic aging process is largely surmounted and the related previous vicious genetic manipulation finally remedied again. A looming new war will break out and last for approximately 40 years. During this period, or about 6 years prior, humans will be converted into machines, that is, robots, for the first time by connecting their nervous system to microscopic electronic biologic gadgetry and machinery that will serve to guide them. This will cause great problems about 85 years later, when the now powerful scientists begin to play God, as they had done in earliest times, and they will create new hybrids between humans and animals through genetic alterations. These new semi-humans will declare their solidarity with the robotic humans. But before this transpires, another 80 years will pass after the creation of robotic humans, as I mentioned previously. With the creation of robotic humans, intelligent, biologic electronic machine-like robots will be constructed. A gigantic space station will be built, upon which a vast number of humans will live while the station travels in its own orbit around the sun. Because of man's intrinsic attitude, induced by his degeneration, wars and revolts will occur on Mars. These events will transpire when humans, after conferring with extraterrestrials, construct residential buildings beneath the oceans which will dangerously interfere with the ecologic equilibrium of the oceans, land masses and the air. Once again the